Chocolate souffle, that marvelously light, delicious, dramatic dessert, is nothing but a thick chocolate-flavored sauce into which beaten egg whites are incorporated. The eggs automatically puff the souffle when it goes into a hot oven. A baked souffle will stay fully risen for at least a minute or two, giving you plenty of time to rush it to the table. That's really what I like to read in a recipe that I've never made before, is that you have to bake it perfectly, tiptoe up to it and whisper in its ear, and then rush it to the table because there's a ticking clock and it will fall within a minute or two. Ah! I think it's finally time to get started. I'm gonna stop nervous yapping. Oh, mess. My oven is preheated to 375. I'm ready. I'm not feeling very confident. I think I overcooked it. Oh, we're doing it. I'm gonna try to make a souffle. I don't even really have anything exciting to say, except that I'm a little bit nervous. I remember when I was a girl, my mom would make souffles. They were always savory souffles, and I frankly remember them being pretty disgusting. I bet had she made a chocolate souffle, I probably would have enjoyed it more. And her requirement on souffle days was that we had to tiptoe in the kitchen and could absolutely not open the oven or the world would end. So I'm nervous about stepping too loudly. I'm nervous about knowing when it's done. I'm nervous about what would actually be my second failure this week. You'll see the other one sometime soon. They're pretty bad. While I wouldn't usually practice something that I feel like is going to be as technically demanding as this in front of other people, I figured that maybe we could both learn something today. I'm sure that this is not as difficult as I'm making it out to be in my head. I've worked with egg whites a lot in the past. I know how to milk chocolate. I can follow instructions, but it's so intimidating to me. And I thought perhaps the first lesson is to do things that scare you, because that's what I'm doing today. So there's a couple parts to a souffle, and I'm learning this week in the other recipes that I'm making that involve egg whites and meringue, that the key is really to understand your egg whites. Egg whites are what's providing all of the leavening or lift in this souffle, handling them carefully so as not to knock the air out of them when we're combining the chocolate is really key. I'm gonna take my time on the steps, which are seemingly relatively straightforward. We need to make the base of the souffle. We need to make that egg whitey part of the souffle. We combine those two things together very gently, put them in a prepared ramekin, and then bake them in the oven. That's it. I don't think this recipe is actually gonna take that long, and I'm starting to kind of question why I've built it up so much in my head. But let's get into it and see what happens. So the joy of cooking lays out the special tools or equipment that we need. Key among them is some sort of a souffle dish. These 6 ramekins are the only 6 ramekins that I own, but I'm gonna start here. I figure that I'll likely have more batter than I have ramekins, which is actually a good thing because maybe I can do them in 2 different shifts in the oven if I learn something from the first bake. Really helpful to have a stand mixer or a hand mixer. We're beating egg whites and that takes forever by hand. You can do it, but it takes forever by hand. And the only other thing that I have on my bench that actually is not in this recipe, of course they can't perfectly stick to a recipe, but it's my microplane. I'm going to zest some oranges into these chocolate souffles. From all of the studying that I've done, it doesn't appear as if the orange zest will impact them at all, except to give them a really delicious flavor. I think it's finally time to get started. I'm gonna stop nervous yapping. So I've read this recipe about 1 million times, but I'm gonna keep it close at hand, just in case. The first step of the recipe is to prepare our ramekins. I'm going to generously butter them with softened butter and then create a sugar layer. The recipes that I've read are very specific about ensuring that you have a really uniform and completely covered inside of your ramekin, because that's again what allows the souffle to puff up evenly and not stick to the side of the ramekin. So I'm just gonna take my time and do that now. Step 1 is done. These are gonna go off to the side. And now we're gonna prep our chocolate. The recipe calls for 8 ounces semi-sweet or bittersweet chocolate chopped. These 4-ounce bars of chocolate that are actually found in the baking aisle, 1 bittersweet and 1 semi-sweet. It felt like the right thing to do to combine 2. So I'm just gonna pull these guys out and get to chopping. And we're actually just gonna melt this with some butter and a little bit of coffee that I've added a little bit of espresso powder to, just a couple tablespoons. My typical way to melt chocolate when I have access to a microwave is that way. I use about 20-second bursts in my microwave, stirring in between. That works in most microwaves, but definitely test yours to see if yours runs a lot warmer. It's fine if it takes a little bit longer, but you don't wanna scald your chocolate. Gonna add my butter in with the chocolate, 6 tablespoons. Must be smelling good in here. I can't pet you, my hands are clean, but I love you. So So when you do this microwave method, stirring in between is really important, but it's also important not to go too far. There's still a fair amount of heat in this chocolate, and it's melting with every stir. Some room temperature coffee, 2 tablespoons. Nice and glossy, shiny, it hasn't split. Just beautiful melted chocolate. This needs to cool down enough that we can stir in some egg yolks. So I'm gonna move this off to the side of the bench, let it cool, and in the meantime, I'm gonna zest a couple of oranges. So I'm just gonna take maybe about a tablespoon of zest. These are actually blood oranges. So just gonna take about a tablespoon of zest. I'm gonna mix it in with the chocolate. From everything that I've read, it shouldn't really impact the souffle at all, like nothing chemically happens. I'm looking for probably like a tablespoon. Call that good, the zest of 1 orange. Okay, I'm feeling good about how cool our chocolate is. It's not warm enough to cook the egg yolks. So I'm just gonna add 6 egg yolks. Isn't that so interesting, the different colors in egg yolks? And our couple tablespoons of zest. That I'm gonna put in first. Orange zest is whisked in. Now to add the egg yolks. And it just says to whisk these until combined. Okay, looks like we're combined there. The chocolate looks a little bit grainy, but that's the zest. It's still nice and shiny, hasn't separated at all. Chocolate can be particular, but this chocolate looks great. Time for the egg whites. 6 room temperature egg whites. Cream of tartar, if you want a little refresher on what cream of tartar is, I'll link it up here. And 1/2 cup of sugar. So the recipe says 6 egg whites until foamy. When they're foamy, add the cream of tartar until soft peaks form. And then we gradually beat in after that 1/2 cup of sugar. So this is not unlike other meringue type mixtures that I've made in the past. Looks like a firm peak to me. Okay, we have achieved firm peaks. We have our chocolate ready to be incorporated in, and my ramekins. My oven is preheated to 375. I'm ready. So the next step of the recipe, using a large rubber spatula, stir 1/3 of the egg whites into the chocolate mixture, then gently but thoroughly fold in the remaining mixture. Divide the batter equally among the ramekins, and then we're gonna do something that I read in many recipes online, but is not included in the Joy of Cooking, so I'll show you that in a second when we get there. So gonna give this one final little mix just to make sure everything's well incorporated. Now we're going to take a little bit of the egg white mixture and mix it pretty vigorously into the chocolate. We're trying to lighten this heavy chocolate mixture up a little bit so we have an easier time folding it into the egg whites mixture. This is more about incorporating the 2 things together. Look how pretty that is. So I'm getting all the way down to the bottom of my bowl. There's no rogue chocolate in there. So now I'm gonna add the light to the heavy. Probably should have used a bigger bowl, as always. And fold it together. Making sure that I'm getting all the way to the bottom of the bowl, and I'm only going until the 2 things are combined. I don't want to knock too much air out, so I'm going to call that good. Ah! Next step. Divide the batter equally among prepared ramekins. Now the step that is not listed in the Joy of Cooking is something that supposedly really helps these babies to rise. And that is to run a thumb around the rim. So I'll show you what I mean when we get there. Okay, our soufflés are in. I want them just level with the top. Okay, perfect. I'm not usually a big paper towel user, but I'm going to use some for this step. So the next step is to run your thumb along the inside of the soufflé, creating a little rim. Oh, mess. And the purpose for this is to, I guess, give it space to expand up versus clinging to the side and expanding out. It also looks kind of cool. Okay, I took a little time to clean them up a little because I really made a mess out of that rim clearing part. Bake until risen about 20 minutes in a 375-degree oven. So they're going in, and I'm gonna show you that process. Cross your fingers that these work. I'm not feeling very confident. Guys, we made a souffle. I think I overcooked them. How the heck do you know when a souffle is done? This seems to be a running theme for me with things that I try. But I got like a solid, I mean, I'm gonna tell the story that I got like several inches of lift on the souffle, but it was probably like 1.5 inches. Maybe I should measure next time. That was so much fun to watch them puff up and to cross my fingers the whole time. I feel like it's begging for a little bit of powdered sugar. It's definitely done, maybe overdone. I think I overcooked it. This is so interesting. You can kind of see that I think I overcooked the top. Pretty proud of myself right now. We can do hard things. And the funny thing is, the hard thing actually wasn't even that hard of a thing. I made souffles. I overcooked them, definitely. So 20 minutes in my oven at 375 is too long. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with the way that they turned out for the first shot ever at making a souffle. This was really not that difficult. They aren't as delicate as I thought. Some of them have lost a little bit of shape. They still have risen above the ramekin, which I'm impressed with. Like, any rise for me is a good rise. Wow, what a success. I've had a couple failures in the kitchen lately, which is disheartening, but happens when you like to experiment. So it's really nice to try something for the first time and be successful at it. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. If you liked this video, please give it a like, and I'll look forward to seeing you here next time. Cheers.